Hello, good morning students. On behalf of Vidyadis Vidya Sankul in an online study, I am welcoming all of you. Okay. In today's lecture, we are going to see further studies in the chapter number 12 in standard 8 science, and that will be the friction. Okay, we are going to start the next topic in that chapter. But before going on to the next topic in this chapter, let us take a brief preview on what we have studied so far in this chapter. Okay, so we are going to revise this chapter, and afterwards we are going to see the new topics in this chapter. The first thing that we have learned in this chapter is that the basic idea regarding the friction. The first thing that we have learned is what is a friction. So before understanding the friction, we have understood the topic regarding the force. Basically, we can say that if we push or pull up an object, it will be automatically says that we are applying some kind of force into that object or onto that object. Afterwards, we have seen that there is some kinds of opposing quantity that will be applicable to the force. Okay, it will automatically applicable on the force, and that will and that property of the opposing of force is known as a friction force. Basic idea regarding the friction is that when a two rough surfaces or when a two surfaces come in contact with each other, they will automatically create a friction force. The friction force is always applying in the opposing direction of the force. Okay, if we apply the force in this direction, then the friction force will be applicable on this direction. Okay, it will opposing the direction. Okay, it will applicable on the opposite of the direction. So these are the things that we have already learned. Okay, in the first basic idea regarding the friction. Then we have seen that how the friction is produced due to the contact of rough surfaces with each other. It will automatically create a friction force. Okay, if we have to create a friction force, we have to do the simple activity like we can rub these two hands together. It will automatically create a friction force. So things we have already discussed in the previous lecture. Afterwards, we have seen the types of friction in this chapter. There we have studied about the three types of friction force. Okay, where we have studied that kind of a static friction, kind of rolling friction, and then we have seen a basic straight line or linear friction. For example, if an object wants to stay at its original position, then the friction force is must be equal to the actual force. Then the object will stay at that position only. Okay, if we apply a same amount of friction force onto the object where we are applying the force, then object will stay at rest or object will stay at its original place. It will not change at all. So that type of friction is known as a static friction. Due to this static friction, object will stay at its original place. It will not move ahead. Okay. And then afterwards we have seen sliding friction, in which we have seen that due to less amount of friction force, the object can be moved into the forward direction or in the further direction. Likewise, that we have already seen the rolling friction. Into that we have seen that there is some kind of rolling friction is applying onto the spherical surfaces object. In that we have seen that due to the rotating surface or due to the circular surface of sphere, the football gets revolved around the ground, okay, and onto the surface of the earth, and due to that it can be easily move ahead. Okay, and friction force will be applying less onto that. Sorry. Afterwards we have seen that there is some kind of phenomena that depends and onto that the friction is depend upon. Okay, there is some kind of factors which the friction is depend upon. We have seen that type of factor. Normally that type of factors are what type of surfaces we are using. Okay, it will automatically gives a basic idea regarding the friction. Okay, and the second thing, how much force we are applying. Okay, that we have seen. Okay, and then we have studied about that what happen if the friction is produced high. There we have seen that if a friction force is high, then there is a kind of a heat generated, and due to that heat generated, sometimes it will erupt and fire destruction into the industries or into the machineries, or we have seen that anywhere around us, that due to the friction some kinds of heat is produced. Okay, and so these types of topic we have already seen, but let us take brief preview what we have seen. Okay, the first thing is about a friction. When normally two surfaces came in the contact with each other, it will automatically create an friction. Okay, friction always works in the direction opposite of the object where it is moving. It always slows a moving object down. Already we have seen these are the types of friction. Okay, static, sliding, and rolling friction. Friction how friction affects the motion. So it will automatically gives an idea that friction is whenever we are applying the friction force, it will create a braking system, and due to that braking system we can stop the vehicle, otherwise we cannot stop the vehicle. Okay, so for that the friction is very much useful. We already seen that. Depending of a friction, now I have told you that what are the things then on which the friction is dependent upon, the factors affecting the friction. In that we have seen the two types of thing. Okay, normally friction depends upon the two factors: nature of the surface and how hard the surface is pressed together. There are the things that we have already seen. If two surfaces came in contact with each other, okay, then the friction is start to arise. In other words, we can say that when two surfaces press together, it will automatically if we press more force onto the object, whatever the object we are moving, if we are pressing or if we are applying the more force onto that, it will automatically arise the friction force also. Okay, so these are the things that we have already done. Causes of a friction. Okay, in which we have seen that there is a two types of surfaces, a smooth surface and a rough surface. In a smooth surface there is a less friction is applying, okay, due to the curvilinear surface is not onto that like this. So due to that circumstances, we can say that less amount of friction is applicable onto the smooth surface, while due to these types of edges which colliding with each other, and that is why the rough surface is making a more amount of friction onto that. Okay, they are creating a more friction between them. How now these are the topic that we are discussing today. Earlier we have seen the basic idea regarding the reducing of the friction, but today we are going to see that idea on the further descriptive. So basic idea to reducing the force of friction is what? That whenever we want to reduce the friction, the first thing that we are doing is we can use a rotatory machineries. The first idea, because we know that on a circular surface or in a spherical surface or in a rotating surface, the friction is applying in a less amount. So for the first idea to reduce the friction, we can use a rotatory machines. Okay, it will automatically lessen the friction, because you can imagine that if a tire of cars is not made circular, okay, if it will made up like a rectangular, then what happened? Given you the idea. Really sorry. suppose these are our tires, okay, of car. But what happens if that car's tire is made up like this, and they have to rotate now? So what happens? It will rotate like this, and due to that, what happens? The car cannot be moved faster in the forward direction. It can't be. Okay, so if it needs to move at a faster rate, or if we want to cover a much more distance on a faster rate, then what we'll have to do? We'll have to make this types of circular shape tire. Okay, otherwise we cannot. So for that types of thing, I don't know if you can see the figure or not, but that is why we have made the shape like this circle. Okay, otherwise we can make what this types of tires. We can make it out, but we haven't. Why? What is the reason? Because we want to move at much faster rate onto that. That's why. Second thing is that the braking can be applied, and due to that braking system, the revolving surface can be stopped. Okay, there is a much more higher friction already applicable onto this. So now how can we create the braking system into that? Okay, and if the braking system will be applied, it will create a much more friction. Already the friction is high. Sorry. Already the friction is high. If we are applying now the braking system, what it will create? It will create, or it will double create the friction, and due to that, it will arises the heating effect in the friction. So from that we can understand that we cannot make the we cannot make the tire in a square type shape. Okay, that's why we have made the tire into the circular shape. Okay, wait a 30 seconds, or you can take a screenshot of this. Okay. Okay, so we have seen that that's why we have made the tire in a circular shape. Okay, now you get the basic idea. If we want to lessen the friction, then we have to make a rotatory machine. That's why we have made the machine like this. Okay, the first thing is idea regarding to make a machine rotating, or rotatory machine it is creating a less amount of friction. Okay, see whatever it creates a friction. Already we have made the rotatory machine, but still it creates a friction. But what happens if we create a square type of machines? And then it will create a much more higher friction, and afterwards it will create a much more heating effect onto that. Okay, and that's why fire gets started onto that. So if so much amount of friction is applied, or if so much amount of heat is produced, then it will automatically creating a fire, and that will automatically create a fire burst into that. Okay, so from that first point is to reducing the friction. We'll have to make a rotatory machine. Another thing, still if we make a rotatory machine, it will still creating what? It will still creating a friction. Now we want to lessen the friction into this rotatory machines. Okay, the second thing to reduce the friction into this rotatory machine, we can apply some kind of lubricants in between them. Now the second idea regarding what? We are applying lubricant. Now you are all thinking that what is a lubricant, sir? You haven't told us that what is a lubricant. Lubricant is a type of a thing that will be a kind of a substance, okay, or a kind of a thing, or kind of a material that we are putting to lessen the friction, and that is why it is called as a lubricant. The things which we are putting between the two surfaces came in the contact with each other. The type of a thing, or type of a substance, or type of a particle what we are putting to lessen the friction, it will called as a lubricants. In the kind of a lubricants, what we can applicable or what we can apply, in the lubricants oil, grease. Okay, we can grease is a kind of a substance that we put between these rotatory machines. Okay, kind of like this. If we put oil here, I will erase that. Now if I put the oil or lubricants here in between the two surfaces that are coming in the contact with each other, it will automatically lessen the friction force. Okay, second, oil we can put in between them, grease we can put it in between them, so it will automatically lessen the friction. So that types of thing, okay, they are what? They are basically a lubricants. They are basically a liquid-like structure. They are in a liquid-like form. So that's why we can easily put it in between them. Okay, it will just, we'll have to just what happen? Do that. We can I don't know if you haven't seen or not, that sometimes you are hearing some kind of noises in the mechanical instruments or mechanical motors, or in an industry they were talking about that we'll have to put oil in between them. Okay, they were talking about that this thing is making so much noise, so we'll have to do oiling in this. Even your vehicle, in simply your vehicle, or I think your motor car or your bike or anything particular active application, if that making a noise, what they are simply saying, they will have to do oiling in between them. Okay, so it will automatically lessen the friction, and automatically lessen friction will reduce the noise also. If and two surfaces came in the contact with it is creating some kind of noises also. Okay, it will create a heating also, but it will also creating a noises also. So that's why if we putting the lubricants in between them, it will automatically lessen the noise also, and also it will also lessen the heating in between them. Okay, so the second thing is what we have to put a lubricant. First, we'll have to make a rotatory machines. Second, to reduce the friction in the rotatory machine, we'll have to put what? We'll have to put a lubricants in between them. Now third, okay, we can put the rolling balls in between them. Like this. Okay, if you have seen in these some basic toys, that they are putting these types of rolling balls in between them. If you have seen the fidget spinner, what they have put these types of rolling balls into that. So that's why the fidget spinner gets a lessen friction, and if the lessen friction, then what happens? Then the fidget spinner is rotating into the basic circular path. Okay, and it will be rotated fastly. And if the amount of friction is high, then what happens? Okay, I will give you an idea. If you haven't understand that, your fidget spinner is made up like this. They have put this types of shaft. Okay, now inside that, if you haven't seen that, whatever the thing you are pressing, okay, whatever the thing you are pressed, and then you are rotating your fidget spinner, they have put the rotating balls here. These are the rolling balls. So these are the rolling balls that they have already put it to what? To lessen the friction. Okay, to reduce the friction. Okay, and amount of friction is reduced, then the fidget spinner is rotating at a higher speed. Okay, so that's why they have put it. And in the machineries, we can say that they have put a bearing in between them. They are called as a bearing. Okay, if we put a bearing into the rotatory machine, that will automatically reduce the friction. But into all the rotatory machine, it will be not possible to put this rolling ball. So from that we can understand that they will have to put the lubricants in between them. Okay. So I hope you are all understanding how can we reduce the friction. That's why we have take this. So we have seen these three topics. Okay. First is what? A rotatory machine. Making a rotatory machine will automatically reduce the friction. Second is what? Second, we can put the lubricants in between them. And third thing is what? Rolling balls. These are the three basic ideas regarding this. Now we are seeing what they have written here, and we are going to discuss that also. Unless a force is consistently applied, friction will slow all motions to stop eventually. Okay? Unless force is consistently applied. If the force will not applied consistently means continuously. Okay? If the force is not applying continuously, then eventually what happen? Eventually object will stop at some point. Okay? If we kick a football, okay, that at some point it will stop due to what? Because we are not applying the continuous force into that. So that's why at some point or after some moments that it will get stopped. Second, it is impossible to completely get rid of friction, but it can be reduced. Second thing is what? It is impossible to completely get rid of the friction. It is not possible to completely get rid of the friction, but we can reduce it. Okay. Third one, the friction between a shaft, the long pipe in the picture. Okay, it will be called as a shaft. Okay, this long pipe is known as a shaft. And the outer part of the machine produces a lots of heat. So friction can be reduced by placing ball bearings, okay, between the shaft and the outer part. They have given us one idea regarding the reduction of the friction, but I have already told you the three parts to reduce the friction. Okay, second is what? Yes, here it is the important point. So friction can be reduced by using the lubricants. Look, here is a word that we are discussing. Using lubricants like powders or oils and grease. Okay. Using rollers or wheels. Using ball bearings. If we sprinkle powder on the carom board, it will automatically reduce the friction. That is the idea that we have discussed. Okay. Whenever we are playing carom, what we are doing, we are putting the powder onto the surface of our carom, and that will automatically reduce the friction, and due to this we can put the things. Okay. Oil or grease is applied between the moving parts of machines to reduce the friction. Wheels are used in vehicles to reduce the friction. Ball bearings are used in ceiling fans, bicycle and vehicle to reduce the friction. Okay, ball bearings are mostly used where, see, it is the point that we have to understand that where we can put the ball bearings, because it is not possible or it is not necessary that we are putting the all the rotatory machines ball bearings in between them. Okay, it is not possible. So for that, what we are doing, we can put the ball bearings into the bicycle, ceiling fans, and these are the things there we can put the ball bearings in between the surfaces that came in the contact with each other. Now, what is the useful of a friction? Okay, friction is useful for many our daily activities. See, sometime in the exam, this is the question that can be asked in a 2 marks. That how useful is friction? How the friction is useful to us? So these are the activities that will give us the idea that friction is very much useful to us. Like friction is useful for many of our daily activities. It is impossible to hold a tumbler due to the friction between the hand and the tumbler. See, If the friction is not applied, then we cannot hold the tumbler, okay, we cannot hold the mobile, we cannot hold this pen, we cannot hold this pen drive or anything, books, okay. So for that we need a friction force, and due to that friction, look here it is, I can hold the pen, okay, because amount of friction in between the surface of the pen and my hand is now equal. Amount of force I am applying and amount of friction I am applying onto this is equal, and due to that it can be holding onto my hand, okay. Friction between the feet and the ground help us to walk around the ground. It is impossible to write with the pen or pencil on a paper due to the friction. So now look, if we cannot write down, because wherever we are putting a force, see, if you are putting a force onto your pen and pencil, okay, and if the amount of friction is less, then what happens? Your pen will get sliding onto that. You cannot write, you cannot hold it down. So for writing this, you will have to make sure that amount of friction is at a exactly equal amount to the force you are applying, and that's why you can writing in your books, okay, from your pen or pencil. It is impossible to write on blackboard due to the friction between the chalk and blackboard. Friction is also important to anyone driving a car. A grooved tire treads allow space for water to be channeled away from the road tire contact point, allowing for more friction in a wet condition. Shoes are designed to increase the friction between their soles and their grounds, okay, so that's why we can easily walk or we can easily run on the surface of the ground. Friction and energy. So now what is the idea regarding the friction and energy? Already you have seen that whatever the amount of friction is created, it will create an heating, and heat is a kind of energy. So that's why this is the basic idea, that amount of energy is also produced from the friction, okay. And what type of energy? The heat energy can be produced due to the friction. Friction is always present in any machine with the moving part. If a machine is small or the forces are low, the amount of heat produced by the friction may also be small. Each time two moving surfaces touch each other, tiny bits of material are broken off by friction. Breaking of bits of material uses energy, and that amount of energy is produced, and due to the amount of energy is produced, which type of energy is produced? The heat energy is produced. Now what is the fluid friction? Fluid friction is the force of friction exerted by the liquids and gases on objects moving through them. Now a fluid friction is what? The amount of friction that is produced by, or which is produced by, liquids and gases. Whenever we are putting an object and whenever we are applying the force onto that object, but where on a air or in a liquid like structure, and the amount of friction is applying on the object, okay, due to that gas or the liquid is called as what? It is called as a fluid friction, okay. Fluid friction depends upon the speed of the object. It is basically, it will be applicable on the all these things, okay. It cannot be just considered in a fluid friction. It is simply we can consider in a friction also, okay, because the speed of the object is much more high, then the amount of friction is also much more high, okay. So it will also dependent in other things also, not only in this thing. The nature of the fluid, okay. What is the nature of the fluid? Means birds flying in air have a streamlined body to reduce fluid friction. Look, so they'll have to, birds are flying, okay, and if they'll have to fly at a higher speed, they'll have to reduce the friction, and for reducing the friction, what they were doing, they were streamlined the body, okay, they were streamlined their body like this straight linear path. So that's why they can reduce the friction and they can they can fly at a higher rate, okay. Fishes living in a water have a streamlined body, also they have a streamlined body. So streamlined body makes a friction less, and due to that the friction is less, That's why they can move at a much more higher rate. Okay, so these are the things that we are studying in this chapter. So I complete my chapter here. In next lecture we are going to start the next chapter. Okay, so I'll give you some homework in today's lecture. I think you can see from here now. Okay. Question number 1. How to reduce question number 2. How friction is useful to us. Question number 3. What is fluid friction? Also, another topic that we have discussed. Okay, but this is the homework for today. Okay, so I hope you all are understanding these topics very well. Okay, and we'll meet in the next online lecture where we are starting the new chapter. Thank you very much for reading this lecture, and please stay safe, stay home. Okay, wear mask or please sanitize your hands. Okay, because the corona cases are increasing, and I am requesting you that please stay safe. Okay, don't go outside, don't play around outside. Okay, please stay safe, stay at your home. Okay, and enjoy our online lectures. I am hoping that you are all enjoying these online lectures. Okay, we'll meet in the next lecture. Thank you very much for reading this lecture. If you had any kind of doubt, you can ask me on the comment section. You can ask me personally on my WhatsApp, or you can ask me personally by contacting me. Okay, thank you very much. Till then, bye bye everyone, and take care of yourself.